coming in, and it triggered some event. And we've been going back and forth a lot with Lavelle Energy of what would actually trigger an event. Obviously, there could be too much data. How often do you want the sensor data coming in saying, here's the temperature of the room? So it's not as simple as saying, well, let's just stream in all the data that's coming in. It's about filtering what's relevant and placing it in the plan that makes sense from a user interface perspective to who's looking at this to make a decision. So this is a live sensor data of that particular piece of equipment. And the same thing with, if I want to click on the webcam here, this is actually a webcam. This is a sample webcam. It's not a real project, so we actually linked to a webcam that is actually turned in the wrong direction here, so it's looking at the wall, but it's coming from a laboratory. The reporting that comes out of here, I can go in and say I want to create a report of the whole facility. So I want to say I want to see the floor slabs of everything. This is room by building by building, and all those buildings on the site are 5 million square feet, and the building we're looking at called Wing C is up toward the top here somewhere. There it is right here. It's 134,000 square feet, and it shows floor by floor area. Or I could say, well, I want to really see more detailed report of Wing C and pull up a facility report, and now it's giving me a room by room report down to the last room that I just shifted on the first floor. So it's retotaling the spaces. As the graphics are changing, the reports are changing. And for those of you that are involved with this kind of activity in the building design and facility management, we all know that typically you're working on a CAD file, then you create an Excel file, then the CAD file changes and you have to say, what version are you looking at? Let's update that. It's a very disconnected and very wasteful process, but that's pretty much the status quo of the industry. This is showing the future. This is the big idea, as everyone was talking this morning at the conference, is how do we leapfrog all this inefficiency that's happening and being able to start making decisions about what we're doing on a facility. So if I go back, there's a lot of other kind of reports that can come out of here. We have an early kind of an energy report, so you can start analyzing how much energy is being used in the rooms. If you're designing a new building, there's a lead report. You can say, well, here's the owner is thinking of making this building lead platinum or whatever it is. This one's lead platinum, and it's showing which credits they're going after. So we're attaching decisions to the building. So the building becomes an interface to view reports, but it's also becoming an interface to attach even other static data or something that we call BIM mail. We can actually communicate. It's like a Twitter through the building. If I send a message to my team in Pasadena and I tell Young, take a look at this furniture, do a furniture study here. What this does is it sends him an email, and I can send my cell phone as well here, please study. If I send this message, the model is sending a message. I'm in this space, so when I get an email, it's going to send me a link back to this floor plan, which means if I got it a week later, I could have still been working on this. Young is not going to get the floor plan as it looks now. I might have changed it by tomorrow. So when you're starting to collaborate, you're seeing real-time data. And that's really been the differentiator in what we found in BIMstorm. When you start interacting in real time, you're not looking at last week's newspaper. You're working with the data that's coming out of the newsfeed directly, and you're able to make decisions right there. It's a huge difference in how you work. And we've had, unfortunately, as an architect, I've had more success talking to owners about this than to other architects and engineers. This is a status, if you look at the status quo, this is a threat to how things are being done today. It definitely is a game changer. But we are very confident that this is the only way that makes sense to reduce waste, to become more efficient, to spend resources on things that make more sense to spend time on rather than doing things manually. Let's see what's going on. Okay, so Google Earth. Okay, so let's look a little bit at Google Earth. What this Google Earth file is doing, it's actually it's streaming data in from our server. So these files in Google Earth, this is actually built into Google Earth. It's something called a network link. Network links, in fact, if I refresh this, I want to reload this. It's a very small file, and you see that it's turning right here. It's actually streaming in data live from our server and saying, here's what's going on the server right now. If I look at departments and go over here and say, okay, let's look and see what's going on here. So these spaces that I was editing earlier now, I don't have to send a Google Earth file to somebody and say, here's what I'm doing. I just send them a link, and the Google Earth server is going to our server, to the Onuma server, pulling in the latest building data and saying, here's the building as it stands right now. Again, we're not looking at last week's newspaper, we're looking at current data as it's coming in from the server. And even in Google Earth, if you click on things, it starts bringing in information about here's an office, the capacity of the office, and in fact, here's the sensor data too for that room. So this is Google Earth, pulling in data from the Onuma server connected to the VROC server, all coming together as VRI to be able to show you real-time planning data layered on top with real-time energy data coming in from the sensors. I can also look at historical energy use. So if I say, okay, for the week, what's going on here? Let's look at, in Google Earth there's a timeline here. If you drag the timeline, you can see on what day did that building turn red, why did it turn red, and get reports on what's going on there. So if I refresh this again, it actually starts pulling in the newer data. There's little light bulbs that go on that show status. Let's see if I can turn some of those on. I think I got too much stuff turned on here, but let's try it. So again, simple graphics, and if you want to drill down into more levels of detail, sure, you can keep going down, but there's no reason to load a 200 megabyte file and say, well, here's a stack of documents, go find where that piece of equipment is. You're getting right to the source, and it's very much built on how the internet works. You don't go to Expedia and download all of Delta's schedules as an Excel file and then try and find a flight. It's gone by the time you download it. So you interact directly with the source of the data, and you're able to make decisions like that on the fly. So today's session was kind of an introduction to what we're doing with BIMstorm, what we're doing with VRI and VROC and live sensor data. We're here to show what's possible. We're not saying this is the only solution. We're just saying that through web services and open standards, we're ready to show how this works with others in the industry. We work with a lot of other different groups in the industry. We want to make connections to show how that can work. We know that this can't be done by any one organization, so we feel very strongly about that's important to do. We also can demonstrate later on. We actually have an iPad here. We can start creating a building just from an iPad. We can start listing equipment and furniture, and we've done this at several conferences where we had through iPhones, an audience of 400 actually submitting buildings as we were doing the presentation. At the end of the presentation, we had a city model built of Boston of different building heights. So that mainly is to show how easy we have to make this as easy as possible, as was discussed this morning at the plenary session. If we can't make this easy, it's never going to fly. And we have to figure out how to make it easy for the industry to interact, for owners to understand it, for consumers to be able to understand what they're looking at. And when you want to get into more detailed engineering type analysis, then you're welcome to keep on drilling down and going into what I was showing here. So this model right here is what we would take and give to the architect. So being able to rapidly go through a lot of different configurations, we could then represent the owner and say, okay, the owner wants to design a building, and here's what it looks like. We have all the pieces in place. We have the equipment and furniture. We know what floor we want a piece of equipment. We know how big the room has to be. We know what the floor finish has to be, or the security level, or the temperature of the room, the goals that we have, the lead. Now let's pass that off as a database. The database goes to the next team, and they work with that. They don't work having to read through a Word document and reinterpret that and basically rebuild it from on their own. Are there any questions? Anyone kind of quickly here? So we'll be here tomorrow. Actually, we'll be here all afternoon, but tomorrow we're going to be going a little bit more detail on this. Yeah. The question is, the question was, if the architects aren't adopting this, who's creating this? Some architects are moving into BIM pretty rapidly, but there's a lot of resistance still. We've found that a lot of teams are going directly to the owner and providing these type of services to the owner, and owners are getting more sophisticated about what they're asking for. So for GSA, for example,